So guys, I want to do another tough video, and this has been a story that I've been wanting to tell for a couple of years that, I've had a bunch of racist and bad experiences at my college, and, pardon me, like my Airbnb is right next to the airport, but I do want to kind of say that, when it comes to like my experiences, there are some stories that I may have not talked about, earlier on in my life because obviously some things are very painful, or I really just want to make sure that, these do come off as messages instead of revenge videos. And then I also want to make sure that, there is self-reflection, because I do think if I'm just like hitting somebody or knocking somebody down, it becomes more like defamation of character. Like obviously, I know I've done that in the past. I know I've talked about my issues with the 4 Hour Film Project, and that's kind of been almost like the first like tough video. But without further ado, I want to talk about my experience at college with a racist professor. That I went to Johnson State College, which is now called Northern University, and it was one of those things too that there were not a lot of people of color. I am mixed race, but a lot of people think that I'm African American. And sometimes I've even said to people that I am actually mixed race. The next sentence they'll say is black, because there are a lot of people who think that all mixed race people are black unless you have a Hispanic last name or a Hispanic accent or something like that. People can be still very dated in their beliefs, or they can choose not to change. But I had a professor named Tony, and what happened was that there was a bunch of racist incidents. And I do want to say that, and I do want to talk about those stories. I think the first thing that I would say is that he did say that he marched with Martin Luther King. And it seemed like with me, whenever I wrote, he always kind of wanted me to write about how I have gay parents. And he also wanted me to write about being a black man. And then also I was kind of like a little socially awkward. So there was like so he was spreading a rumor that I may be Asperger's syndrome. And there was another professor that had that said I may be ADHD. But there's a couple things that I want to just break down. First of all, is that number one, anybody should be able to write about what they want to write about. Imagine if you had a black student with like dreadlocks, and they kind of and yeah, imagine if you had a black student with dreadlocks and they were a really great science fiction writer, and they were in college and they want to master in fiction. Should you encourage them to to do what they're good at, be a fiction writer, and teach them how to be a better science fiction writer? Or should you be like, okay, no, you are black. You've told me that you didn't grow up with a father. You had a mother that smoked marijuana. Um, you had to write in your house on the floor because bullets were coming into you through your window. Would you want someone to say, okay, well, we're going to write about that stuff because that all fits the stereotype of, of black people, that black people are people with dreads, black people have, don't have fathers, black people have mothers that are irresponsible, black people have bullets going through their house, or would you want this kid to be like, no, I want to ignore all that, I actually just want to write my science fiction and be like the next Akira Toriyama, Ridley Scott, or Isaac Asimov? I would think that a good professor would be like, okay, well, if you want to stick with that path of being a science fiction writer, stick with it. We're not going to just take your story. We're not going to like tell you to be a nonfiction writer and write about, these other your black experience where a person can connect it with stereotypes. But in my college, they did a lot more of that. I was a mixed race kid that looked black, that had gay parents, and was adopted out of a bad situation. So a lot of people wanted, the black kid adopted by the gay white people story. That's what a lot of people really wanted. And definitely, my professor Tony wanted that from me, really. So it kind of looks like a white savior experience. And as I said, that really hurts writers. I want to actually write about my pain. I also want to write about emotional abuse, verbal abuse, ableism, racism, trauma, and other issues, and just how I became a hateful person and learned not to be a hateful person because of all the hate that I've experienced. But it was like, no, we're not doing that. I'm not going to help you develop to be the writer that you want to be. So that happens with a lot of writers in college. Is that um, it's definitely the Kathleen Kennedy approach. Put a chick in the linguine and make it fucking gay. Put a chick in it, make it gay, and make it lame as fuck. You know, a lot of just professors stepping in and being like, you know what, a student has a disability, they're gonna write about that. A student is black, I want to know about their life, and I want to kind of attach them to stereotypes. Are they a black person overcoming ghetto parents? Or are they a black person that's adopted by whites, and how great it is to have white parents? Obama is president, so what is it like to be a black man in America with Obama in the White House, and how is that such a liberation for black people? So definitely, he was one of those people that wanted me to write about being this maybe autistic black kid adopted by gay white people, and also whatever violence that I've experienced, whatever anger and whatever things I wanted to talk about that were hard hitting and graphic. No, you're not going to do that, because you're not going to do that, you know. So that's also not good. You know, you prevent from a person from being the writer that they want to be. So the other issue was also a lot of political incorrectness. There were times where he's called me black student, very inappropriate. I was also telling my friend the story where what happened was that he asked everybody, you know, to say what is a psychological drama. Can anybody give me an example of psychological drama, psychological thriller? I said The Heart of Darkness, and then he said Nigger of the Narcissus. And for those who do not know, Joseph Conrad, the writer, wrote Nigger of the Narcissus. Back in the 1900s, 1800s, calling a black person a nigger was politically correct. But he also said after that, oh, I forgot that I had a black man in the room. And I've also had a professor, Dan Towner, use the word nigger in his class. But definitely, those things did happen at my college where professors would use the word nigger. And I would also remember I had a third professor use the word nigger in front of me. It was like one of the art professors. But the point of it, I think it was her name was like Margaret or something like that. But Margaret or Maggie, it was just like an older woman, very older woman. But the point of it is that that was kind of like my other role too, was that, okay, well, I was the black student in their eyes, the mixed race kid that was actually black, and people wanted their fill of using the word nigger around me, you know. And I honestly felt like I was Samuel Jackson and Quentin Tarantino during the dead nigger storage scene. You know, just you're gonna let Tarantino have his fill of saying the word nigger, and that's not okay, really. But I think at that time I felt hurt, I felt angry. I was like, and I actually didn't do anything about it, because I was like, you know, two things were stirring inside me. I was kind of like, you know what, I wasn't that life experience, so I kind of assumed that that's just how white people were, or older white people. Just, okay, you know, you have no, there's not a lot of diversity, so they say the word nigger. That's just what they're used to. I was called a nigger many times in college. You know, it was definitely, as I said, my role was the black kid, but I was called nigger in very racist ways. So, you know, it was definitely, you know, unfortunate that that happened. But I would also kind of say that obviously the other issue was that I could snap really easily. So I was kind of afraid of talking about my issue, thinking that if I just even verbalize it, I would be like the Incredible Hulk and just go on a rampage. And then also, most black people don't want to do that, because then it perpetuates the stereotype that you're just an angry nigga or a hood rat nigga type of thing, really. You know, so that's why most people don't, who are people of color, who get more offended by the N word. That's why we don't stand up sometimes, is because we don't want to kind of do what white people want us to do, which is to get angry, go on a rampage, and then people are like, okay, well, then you are actually a nigga. You know, you're actually that violent, crazy black man that we all know and love and stereotype. You know, so so that's why most people do not. Well, that's why most people don't really just report it, but because it is, and it's also like embarrassing. You know, it's the same with sexual harassment. There's a sense of anger, there's a sense of shame, there's a sense of embarrassment, there's also a sense of you don't want it to be a public thing, because because as I said, I'm mixed race. And I actually remember being interviewed by the school newspaper about me just being like an interesting person, and I said I'm mixed race, and they changed it to black. But But yeah, it's one of those things that I kind of felt that what would happen if it got to human resources, Tony got suspended or he got fired, and then people were like, okay, well, Byron's this African American victim, and I'm like, no, I'm biracial, I'm mixed race. No, Byron's a black victim, and then it repeats that same cycle of um, of racism. There's one quick story I'm going to tell you guys that I remember when Barack Obama was president, became president, they had his inauguration thing. There were a couple things that happened. There were a bunch of white people shaking my hand all the time. And then there was also just them serving fried chicken, watermelon, Kool-Aid, and other things at my college. And then also I remember getting a lot of talks from my white professors of like, then you must be proud as a black man. Um, with Obama as president. And then I also will say that the other thing that I'll share is that definitely I remember taking an African American literature class, and there were people bringing in like African dishes, being respectful. There's some people bringing fried chicken. There's some people bringing in grape soda and other things like that. And I remember like wanting to flip over the table when I saw the grape soda and other things because I was just like, come on, you got to just put a race joke or whatever in it. So that was kind of like the thing really. But I remember, my experience around the word nigger. It was definitely very unfortunate, and I actually kind of I remember one time I was being an idiot because sometimes what happens with me in my psychology, I have a problem of sometimes when somebody does something inappropriate to me, I may repeat the same behavior. And I'm not sure why in my brain I do that, but that used to be worse when I was younger. But I remember like one time I had an art exhibition, and they said that everybody has to share their exhibition with another artist. So I said I'm going to share it with my friend Ben. He's my nigga and whatever. And I remember he's a white guy, so I was trying to make him feel awkward, and that was a stupid thing to do. But I remember it came from the pain that Tony caused me, other people caused me. But I remember like some of my white professors said like, "Wow, I knew Byron was going to say that at one point," or I knew he was going to say that at one point because that's a stereotype of black people that they call each other niggers or nigga, or they or when they have a white friend, they're going to call them that just to be kind of funny, really. So it was unfortunate and it was very inappropriate that happened. And I do want to talk about the last story where he took advantage of me. What happened. No, there are two other stories I want to tell you. The first one was that I remember like taking a class. No, I remember like he always flipped out with people if they didn't do their homework. Like he would tell the class, just going on a tirade and getting really scary, angry, and then saying things like just like saying things like, it's your fault, but it's not really your fault. It's the administration. It's this lack of standards. So it would kind of just put him in an angry fit, an angry tirade. The other thing that happened was I remember like one time he was helping me, like he was going over my writing, but he was having a bad day, so he was punching his table hard as he could. He was like, each time you write, you need to tell yourself it doesn't make some goddamn fucking sense. And I remember just feeling really angry. He said like, you're gifted, but you write like a crazy fucking son of a bitch sometimes. And I understand that he may try to be real with me, but I did kind of feel that that it was one of those things too that I grew up with a lot of bullying or harshness, or sometimes I misspelled words and I had issues with typos growing up. So my parents would kind of, break my balls, or sometimes they'll be like, okay, well, you're going to be doing your homework past midnight and other things like that to just learn how to write correctly. I remember one time I had an issue with knowing how to write sentences correctly. So my dad made me write like a few chapters of a book and be like, okay, when I was like, I remember like I remember like I was in middle school, my dad just made me read a book and then write down and type up 3 or 4 chapters, and just so I understand sentence structure. And how the fuck do you teach a kid sentence structure? You need to kind of say, okay, this is what is a sentence. This is how you have issues with typos, so we need to learn how to correct typos. But I was always kind of like berated. And as I've told you that, I remember like my senior year of high school, my dad just like flipping out and being an asshole and being a bully, correcting my homework and other things like that, because he wanted like a last chance to just be like the asshole father. But it would have also transferred over with Tony as well, really. Just like Byron is gifted. Byron's a great writer. He does have some typos. He does have some errors. He has some things he needs to work on. But I'm going to be a fucking asshole to him to motivate him to get better. Um, the last thing was that, and I've told people this story, that what happened was that there was an exam that everybody took just to see where you were as a writer. So if you passed this exam, you got you get an A+ for the exposition analysis class that I took with Tony. And I actually passed the exam, but he told me that he actually intentionally talked to people and failed me because he wanted me to go to a remedial writing class to motivate me to be a better writer. And he also gave me a C for the class when actually I've had stuff published and I've actually just done very well for myself. Like, he kind of had that attitude of, I'm going to be a dick to you. And I've actually talked to counselors and therapists through my life, and they kind of said that there could have been like a racial thing of, okay, well, because he always called you a black guy or saw you as a black guy, he wanted you to be in a black man's role of just, you're a dumb writer and you need extra help, unlike the white people or other things like that, really. But I remember like losing a lot of motivation. And I think that with him, it was either two things. Either it was ego, either it was just, well, you're a hardworking writer and you have a lot of potential, but I definitely want to deter you from realizing your full potential because I don't want to see you go further in life than me, or just I just want to be an asshole, or being an asshole was a way to teach somebody. And like back in the back generations ago, being an asshole was the best way to motivate somebody to get better. But I do have to kind of say that, obviously that was very inappropriate. I should have reported it. But as I learned in my life, when you meet mean people, when you meet unprofessional people, you have to be resilient. You can't get knocked down so easily. But I also will say that another thing is that I've also had a bad habit of, you know what, well, that changed my flow in life, because I do have a really good work ethic and it's very sacred to me. But I do meet a lot of people who just try to make me feel bad or bully me or manipulate me or take advantage of me. When I worked at Conway, when I worked at Southern, when I did it with the New Haven 48-hour film project, Salvatore the Greco, a big user and bully. When I've also went to college and I had Tony Whedon as a professor and Daniel Towner and a couple other people and Tyrone Shaw, like a lot of just, people who have hurt me and screwed me over intentionally, because it's almost like, what, you're a hard worker, but also you're a black writer or a black person. I'm going to treat you differently because that's what we do with niggers that have a lot of potential in this world. We know how to treat them so that way they live their life in mediocrity instead of actually just doing their best. Or instead of nurturing, we do more hurting than nurturing, or we do more abusing as a way of teaching, And I remember my professor Tyrone Shaw, and I'll do a video about him. He did say that he went to Hollywood one time and he worked very hard on a script, but like what happened was somebody took a script, ripped it up and stomped on it and wiped his feet with it, and that was kind of how it was back then. That's how my professors were taught. And then my professors became professors. So there is generational trauma. There is generational bullying. Bully the person with a lot of potential. But now you kind of see a lot of these free-spirited hippie professors. Now you see professors that when you go to school, they give out like a big basket of candy, and it's like, and a lot of like the college level is very similar to middle school or high school level in this country. There are some colleges that actually do the right thing and make it challenge appropriate. And then there's also colleges that take people with potential and respect them and don't be like, okay, well, I'm just going to be an asshole to you to teach you that you have potential, and I'm going to be an asshole to you. There's plenty of colleges that don't do that style anymore. But definitely it was all very hurtful shit. It caused me a lot of pain. But I think that lessons are this, that obviously if you are being disrespected by a professor or anybody in college and they're talking about your race, you have to report it right away, because you don't want a long-term relationship. The next thing is that if you are mixed race, you always have to advocate and say, I identify as mixed race. And anybody who says that I'm black or I'm Asian or I'm Japanese when I'm actually Chinese, then they're the bigots, and I'm going to call it out, because I have the right to be who I identify as racially. And if people can't accept it, or people are going to correct me to being the race that they want me to be, I'm going to just I'm not going to tolerate it. And that's the important thing. because we should all be respected. And, this isn't the 1940s um, where all brown people are blacks or all brown people are colored, and other things like that, So yeah, but also too that no matter how people treat you, you always need to work hard and realize your full potential. And then also the other thing too is that it's always good to have those relatives, those friends you can talk deeply about your experiences with, because then that way they can guide you in the right direction, really. But yeah, it does make me feel better to tell you guys these stories. And I also like doing my YouTube videos where I can talk about these, but professors need to be held accountable for their behavior. And now I'm doing that right now, really. But yeah, it's always important. I have some other stories about my experience at Johnson State College, Northern University, that I'll definitely share.